Hello and welcome to another program with Pastor Frank Lewis. And we're going to talk today about the need for attachment. Attachment is a critical piece to raising children. This is so vitally important. We talked about bonding 2 weeks ago, and today we're going to talk about attachment. We talked about what happens when you don't have bonding. And we talked about the fact that bonding is the parents meeting the physical needs of the child. Attachment is where the parents meet the emotional needs of the child. So this is the subject. It's going to be very, very important for you to understand that in order to be giving your child the proper foundation for their life, they're going to need to have attachment. Attachment is that part where you actually establish an emotional relationship, an emotional connection with your child. And it takes parents that are willing, that really want to know how to do this. And I'm going to share with you today some of the results, some of the things you can do, but mostly the results of a secure attachment and an insecure attachment. And so we're going to dig into that, and it's going to be very, very important for you to maybe even take notes, because this is a subject that if your child doesn't end up with a secure attachment, or at least a more secure attachment, they're going to have problems for the rest of their lives. In all of their relationships, they're going to have pain. I'll be talking about that next week. And they're just not going to be in a very good position. But before I do that, I want you to know about my book. This is the basis on which everything I'm putting together in this book, called The Parent's Playbook, is actually, this is the foundation piece. This is my book, The Key. And it talks about the different aspects of how to get unresolved emotional pain resolved. It's very, very important to know how to do that, because you can't really raise emotionally healthy children if you haven't got your unresolved emotional pain at least under control, if not healed. The very best is to have it healed. It's got to be at least somewhat healed. And so the other thing I have is I have a website called relationshipsrevealed.org. And that website, you can go to that. I have the list of the books I'm writing, and you will be able to find the list of those books. And you'll be able to hit the Want Help button, and you will go directly to my email, and I'll be able to get in touch with you and help you. The other thing that we have is I have 2 YouTube channels. One of them is Relationships Revealed with Pastor Frank Lewis, and the other one is Fortifying Families. And so you're going to be able to go to either one of those, and you're going to be able to find out about the marriage videos and the parents' videos, and then testimonies of people that have actually experienced emotional healing in the work that I do. Let's get into attachment and why attachment is so vitally important to every child, and for parents to know that attachment is the piece that is so important, so valuable, so necessary to help your child be emotionally healthy. We have a lot of problems in our world with unemotionally healthy children that are just not healthy. They just don't have the emotional health that comes from good bonding and building that trust relationship, like I talked to you about 2 weeks ago, and then building at this time we're going to talk about building the emotional relationship. So how are you going to create an emotional relationship with your child? You're going to have to be able to set up in your mind that you must accept your child, listen to your child, accept their emotions. If they're angry, you've got to accept their anger. You've got to comfort them. But you don't, if you scold them or you punish them for their anger, that's not going to work. That's going to cause really, really difficult problems. And so it is going to be, they're not going to be able to have the freedom to express themselves. And that's not what you want. That's not what you want, because what that does is that causes the child to then not express their emotions. They bury their emotions. They push their emotions down, and they have no place to deposit those emotions. And so they're stuck. And they're going to be in unresolved emotional pain because of that. And so it's going to be very, very important for you as the parent to realize if your child is angry or sad, the best thing you can do is match. Behavioral scientists call tuning. They call it attunement. And what it is it's tuning into the emotions of your child. You want to, if they're happy or they're joyful, you want to match that emotion. That's a great emotion to match. And let your child know that you're with them. Remember, brain scientists have said, and they tell us that the definition of what our brains run on is joy. And joy comes from someone being glad to be with us. So if you're glad to be with your child as they are growing up, you're going to give them more of a secure attachment. You'll be able to have them know that it's okay to be excited and happy, but it's also okay to be angry, frustrated, downcast. It's okay. All your child's emotions have to be okay, because if they're not okay, then your child is going to know that they cannot, let's say, for instance, with anger. If you punish anger, you scold them for being angry, what you're going to cause them to do is you're going to cause them to not be able to express anger. And if they can't express anger, then what's going to happen is they're not going to be able to protect themselves. They're not going to be able to set up good boundaries. They're going to get taken advantage of. My wife, who went to heaven almost 4 years ago, absolutely did not ever get angry. And the reason why is because she was shamed and she was punished for getting angry. She could never get angry. She thought if she got angry, it was a mortal sin. But guess what? She didn't have good boundaries, so she got taken advantage of a lot before we ever met. And that's a problem. So you've got to accept your child's emotions, whatever they are. It's just very, very important to accept. Acknowledge and accept. And how do you deepen your attachment with your child? Because the deeper your attachment goes, the more secure they're going to feel. They're going to feel like they have a good foundation. They're going to feel like it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be whatever emotion they're feeling. And if they know it's okay to feel whatever emotion they're feeling, they're going to feel better about themselves, because they're going to know that mom and dad are okay with their emotions. And so how are you going to do that? Well, you're going to deepen your emotional connection. Your emotional connection with your child, you're going to deepen it by listening to them, by whatever they have to say. You listen to them. You then reflect back what they just said in your own words, but they've got to be age-appropriate words. If you have a toddler or a young child, you have to reflect back what they're saying in age-appropriate words. But once they know that they've been heard, see, one of the things you've got to realize as a parent, and this is true with all of us, is that we were created by God to be in relationship. And so we need desperately to be listened to. We need to be heard, and we need to be loved. Those are the needs of all human beings, okay? And so what you're going to do for your child is you're going to listen to them, intentionally listen to them. You're going to get maybe down on a knee. You're going to look them in the eye. You're going to listen to them. Because what that's going to tell them is that they're valuable and important enough for you to listen to them. So that's a vital thing that you must do. And then, like I said, you reflect back to them. Now, why do you do that? What is this need to reflect back? The reason why you reflect back to them is because then they will know that they're heard. Remember what I just said. Every human being needs to be heard. So you are now hearing your child. How do they know you're hearing them? Because they heard you say back to them what they just said. And that causes them to be heard. They know they're heard, and it deepens the relationship because it creates an emotional connection. Now, if you can want to even go deeper with your emotional connection, you can validate them. Validate their every experience. In other words, if they're sad, you validate their sadness with empathy. As much empathy as you can put into it. You validate their sadness. You validate their anger. You validate their disgust. You validate their being upset. You validate that. And you just simply tell them that by acknowledging it and accepting it and even approving of it. Why? Because your child, when they actually have emotions, they are actually being who they are in the moment. So if you scold them, if you punish them for being angry, then you're not accepting your child for who they are. You want them to be somebody else, because maybe that's what happened to you. Well, guess what? If they become somebody else other than who God created them to be, they're going to have the kind of life that you don't want them to have. If you love your children, really love your children, you'll want them to have the life maybe that you didn't have. You'll want them to have a better life than perhaps you've had. You'll want them to do what? To be accepted and approved for who they are, not what they do. See, a lot of parents really accept their children for what they do. If they're good, if they don't get angry, if they, just are really good kids and they don't cause mom and dad a lot of problems. You validate them. Well, it may be that because you didn't bond properly with your child, you haven't attached properly with your child just may be shut down. That happened to me. I got shut down. My father was so overbearing, I got very, very shut down. They took me to the psychiatrist to find out what was wrong with me. What happened is that because my father would not accept me, would not validate me, never listened to me, and so I just shut down. Well, your child may be shut down. The problem is that's not going to help them in the future. It's going to affect all their relationships. So attachment is vitally important if you want to have children that are going to have a good life. Because if a child knows that they are loved, accepted, and approved no matter what they do, then they're loved and accepted and approved for who they are. And if they're loved and accepted and approved for who they are, then they will have a good, strong foundation, and what developmental psychologists say, they will be more securely attached. See, secure attachment is the goal. Secure attachment is what you want for your child as a parent. You want to help them to have a foundation of knowing that if they try something and fail, that it really is okay, that they're okay in whatever they do, okay? Now, what happens is if you get on them or you scold them or you talk down to them, when they fail, then they're not going to try. They're not going to try to do new things. If you don't accept them when they're disappointed, you just say, oh, get over it. You get over it. Well, what's going to happen is they're going to have a real problem with disappointment. I had a horrible problem with disappointment because my dad would never let me be disappointed. If you can't accept your children's disappointment, then you're going to end up like me, and I had a horrible problem with disappointment. I really, really disliked being disappointed. And it caused me major problems in all my relationships in school and all kinds of different things. So you got to be very aware of that. So what happens then when your child doesn't have an emotional connection with you? Well, when your child doesn't have an emotional connection with you, what happens is they have no place to put their feelings. They can't express their feelings. So what do? They stuff their feelings. They repress their feelings. Some of you may not have memories of your childhood. I have a lot of people that I work with that don't have memory of their childhood. And what happens is they can't bring up what happened to them. Why? Because they repressed it. They put it down. They wouldn't let it be expressed. See, the reason why children end up with so many problems as adults is because they were not allowed to express their emotions. Their emotions were judged and they were condemned and they weren't validated. And so if emotions are negated, what's going to happen is the child is going to be negated. Every time you negate or you talk badly about your child when they're emotional, you have just really said to your child, I don't like you. I certainly don't love you, because if I loved you and I'd accept you unconditionally, I would absolutely accept all of your ups and downs and everything about you unconditionally. Now, I know that's hard. I'm not saying it's not hard. If you've got unresolved emotional pain, it's going to be doggone near impossible. Why? Because you are going to get triggered by your child's behavior. You're going to get triggered by your child's behavior. You're going to get angry at them. You're going to scold them. You're going to yell at them. You're going to do all kinds of things because you have got unresolved emotional pain. So you're triggering. Your child does something, you trigger. And what happens then is the child then is absolutely knowing that you don't love them. You don't care for them. That you are not interested in who they are. Why? Because you triggered. So it's very, very important to do emotional healing work, which is what I discuss in this book. That's why this book is so vitally important. Before you have children would be a great time, but if you have children and you want them to have a good life, then you got to do your emotional healing work. It's very, very important, because when you trigger, that's going to tell the child that they're not valuable, not important, and not worthy. They may even feel like they're defective. That's what happened to me. My father was triggered all the time. He triggered at every dinner that we had. He had a couple of old fashions, which is a type of bourbon and soda. Anyway, hard drink, and he would relax. But the problem is he picked a fight with me and my sister and sent us to our rooms and would come down and yell at us. So he would get all his angst from being a doctor and being loved by his patients, but not really feeling love for himself, because he was raised without attachment, without bonding. And so it just continues on. I'm doing this work, I'm writing these books because I want to see, I'm driven by God to see people stop the madness, stop what's happening to children has to be stopped. because otherwise it'll just continue generation after generation like it has. And we don't want that. So what you've got to be aware of as a parent is how important it is to create that safety. If you have safety for the child where they can express their emotions safely, what's going to happen is they're going to have a more secure attachment. And that is really going to give them a good, strong foundation, core beliefs that they're okay, core beliefs that, just strong beliefs that they can make a mistake, they can be disappointed, and it's all going to be okay. But if that doesn't happen, you're going to have the less safety that you create for your child where they cannot express their emotions, the less secure they're going to be, the less of a secure attachment they're going to have with you. As a matter of fact, in many cases, in my case, I was afraid of my dad. And it caused me horrible, horrible problems throughout my whole life. And so you don't want that, because if you have that, you're going to have a real problem. Because what kids are going to do is if they can't express their emotions with you, they're going to tamp them down, they're going to put them down, but they're going to act them out in one way or another. Emotions do not die when you push them down. They are part of the child's being, and they're going to do whatever they need to do as they get older. As they grow up a little bit, they're going to act out. They're going to have, they may try to get your attention with negative attention. They may do things out of disobedience to get your attention. They may end up having major problems just because you didn't accept their feelings and have a good, strong attachment. Because if that attachment is insecure, then the child's going to be insecure. That's what happened to me. I mean to tell you, it was bad. I was very, very insecure. I was afraid of my own shadow. I lived in fear of my father. I lived in fear of the world. I was hypervigilant. That's what psychologists say happens to insecurely attached children. They're insecure. Their world is threatening. I was always looking over my shoulder. I was always waiting for the shoe to drop. That may be something that you might be experiencing, but you don't want your kids to experience it. I mean, that's why we're doing this. You don't want your kids to experience that kind of insecurity, because what they'll do is they'll then, if you can't accept them for who they are, they'll become somebody else, and that's exactly what I did. And I hid behind a mask and a facade for most of my life. And for most of my life, I lived in shame. I lived behind a mask and a facade, trying to be somebody I really wasn't. I lived in fear that people were going to discover who I was. And it was a very, very difficult way to live. I mean, it was extremely hard. I married a woman that made me look good, so I felt better about myself, but really was incredibly insecure. It was just a bad, bad situation. I raised my kids like I was raised. I was angry, frustrated, triggered. I did everything I'm telling you not to do, okay? You don't want to raise your kids with insecure attachment. Now, it's on a continuum. I want you to know that. You can have some security, and then the other side of it is insecure attachment, okay? It's on a continuum. So the thing that I know, because I've dealt with it so much over the last 25 years of studying, this whole subject of why I did what I did and brain science and other things, is what I know is that children who grow up to be adults and don't get properly attached have problems for the rest of their lives. And I would have had problems if I hadn't have been living in shame and all this pain and unresolved emotional pain. If I hadn't done the work that I've done, I would not have the great life I have right now. And I have a great life. It's a wonderful life. Even though my wife is in heaven, I'm not married, I don't have anybody right now. I am putting this material together so that you can have, for your children, a great life. And it's going to really make a difference for them. But the main thing is that the goal is to create a secure attachment. Now you have to understand that not only are your own problems of having unresolved emotional pain, but Satan doesn't want you to create an emotional connection with your children. He doesn't want that. That's something he sets up situations, circumstances to trigger you by the behavior of your children. He causes your children to act a certain way that he knows will trigger you. So that's another thing. So this is a very hard thing to do. I don't know, I don't believe actually that there's many people that have secure attachments as children. I just don't believe it. But I want you to do what other people haven't been able to do, and that's why they come and see me, and that's why they're in my groups, so they can get emotionally healed. But you do this, and you'll have a result with your children that you're going to be very happy with, and they'll be emotionally stable, and they will have health. They'll be emotionally healthy. So I want you to recognize attachment. It is supporting and giving acceptance and approval to your child's emotions. It is vitally important. It is the foundation on which all relationships are built. And if you can get that and put that into practice, it's going to cause your child to end up with a very, very, very much better result. It is going to help them to become and to be, not to become, actually to be the children that God created them to be, or at least more of that. What I want you to know is that there is a way to be able to get correction if you didn't do it right the first time, and I'm going to share that with you in the future. You're going to have great results with your children when you can attach properly.